Hi guys. Having covered an important trick to handle the complexity of any Python program through abstraction in previous section, we will now shift our focus to another useful technique, exception handling. It is mainly used to detect various kind of errors as well as to perform a certain function in the output on the detection of such an error. Hence, in this section, we will be introduced to understanding what a syntax error and an exceptions are, followed by the methodology of handling such exceptions, and subsequently we will learn of various mechanisms that are involved with exception handling. However, we will turn our attention to the theme of this video, which will be an understanding of syntax errors and exceptions. In this video, we will only cover two topics and there will be very minimum coding into it. That will be syntax errors and then exceptions. Whenever you write a program, there are bound to be bugs in initial code. It is natural to make mistake, isn't it? We can't expect to write a flawless piece of code in the first attempt itself. And when a line of code is written incorrectly, that is when the structure or syntax of that piece of code is incorrect. The Python parser point out such an error which is called a syntax error. As such, a program with syntax error cannot be compiled properly, and you must rectify the syntax of erroneous code to get desired output. Python makes it easier for you to identify the error by printing the file or line number at which the error was detected. Let's take an example of a code. In this screenshot, I have just mentioned a single line of code mentioning while statement with a conditioning of true. This line is very improper if you try and understand the code. While true, it doesn't have a parameter or parenthesis, and along with that I have mentioned a print command hello world. It is bound to give you an error. If you check it after compilation, it will give you an error of as in syntax error with an invalid syntax. There are many a times when the entire code that you have written may be absolutely correct in the syntax, but still the desired output isn't achieved. Such a error code occurs when Python recognizes the code as correct in syntax but does not know how to perform the action. There are many a times when the entire code that you have written may be absolutely correct in the syntax, but still the desired output isn't achieved. Such an error occurs when Python recognizes the code as correct in syntax, but it doesn't know how to perform the action. Such an error is known as exception. The primary difference between syntax error and an exception is that an exception is not always fatal in the sense that it can be handled during the compilation of the program through certain special statements about which we will learn in the subsequent videos of this section. Let's acquaint ourselves with certain built-in exceptions to further our understanding. So few of the errors that are most common when we are working with Python object-oriented programming and utilizing exceptions. So I've listed down four top most common errors that developers come across. So the first one is zero division error. If you see the input code screenshot that I have taken, I am trying to multiply 10 by 1, which is divided by 0. So when you compile the code, you will get an error warning mentioning trackback. In this, if you check the file, a statement line which will mention zero division error. So when you're trying to compile a code or any statement, especially an integer divided by 0, it is bound to give you a zero division error. Second is a name error. Name error is usually when you're trying to multiply or add up any kind of integers or a string into an arithmetic operation, which is not possible. So as soon as you compile that code, you will have a name error mentioning name spam or a string, whatever you have mentioned in the line of code is not defined as what you want to do, which is bound to give you an error mentioning name error. Third error is a type error. Type error is if you see the code, I have mentioned 2 plus 2. But if you see it properly, the first 2 is given as a syntextual as string or a character base that you want to push in. It's not an integer value. So as soon as you compile the code as an output, you will get a type error. You can see the type error which says can't convert int object to string. So this is usually when you're trying to convert integer based data type to a string value or string based data type to an integer based output that you want to have. Fourth and the last will be a value error. If you see the code, I have mentioned a and assigned it as an integer, but in the parentheses where I have to push or input an integer value, I have put a character based string that is test, and then I am trying to print value of a on the screen. As soon as you compile the code, you will have an value error. Value error defines that invalid literal for integer base because I have mentioned it a will only hold an integer value, in which we are not pushing integer value, we are pushing in the string value. So which is bound to give you an value error. With this, we have learned of an important aspect of object-oriented programming in Python, namely syntax errors and exceptions, and we can use this as yet another tool in our ever expanding arsenal of coding techniques.